Your Honor.
Everyone should have received January 25th meeting minutes by email. Any discussion, corrections, edits, anything? If not, a motion please for approval.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have some guests here from SUNY Upstate that Ann is going to introduce.
I'd like to introduce our guest, Mr. Jerry Morrison, who's sitting here behind me, who is, let's see, let me get your title right. He's the Trauma Outreach Coordinator for SUNY Upstate. That works. Am I right? Yep.
Welcome, Jerry.
And Jolene Kittle.
Yep.
All right. From SUNY Upstate, who is the Trauma Nurse Manager.
Trauma Program Manager.
Trauma Program Manager. And Sarah Fisher, who is new as the Pediatric Program Outreach Coordinator.
No, trauma. She's a pediatric trauma program.
Pediatric Trauma Program Manager. She's replacing, I don't know if any of you remember Steve Atkinson.
Oh,
He was in that position, so I apologize, I got your titles incorrect, but
Well,
I will
we forgive
turn
you
it over
and
to
everybody.
Jerry for a presentation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Periodically, we like to come and talk with some, we actually have 4 Remacs that are in our trauma region. And it's just a chance to kind of touch base with you about some trauma changes coming up. We have some systems issues, things that we're changing with our responses and implications for the hospitals and also for providers. So one of the things that, as we were going through, and I always like to be kind of wide-driven on things, I think inherently it always gone through and, was pretty familiar with the trauma system. And the question, do trauma centers really make a difference? And, I think anecdotally, I had a pretty good idea that they did, but I went looking for some research to see if there was anything that had actually been published. Anybody familiar with a little publication called the New England Journal of Medicine? So even my non-medicine friends recognize that one. They did a study, and what they found was the risk of death at a level 1 trauma center compared to a non-trauma center was 25% higher. And this is talking about the sickest trauma patients, okay? So 25% difference. The next question was that currently, we're moving in the system in New York State from 2 levels of designation to 4. So one of the questions was, between the 2 highest levels, is there a difference in patient survival between level 1 and level 2 facilities? And what that found was there's a 15% difference between those 2 levels. And my idea is we don't work quite as well as I thought it would, so I'm going to come back over here. So New York State is in the process of that transition from state designation for trauma centers to using the American College of Surgeons national verification process. So in New York, we're going to be starting with 4 levels. There is a 5th level, which tends to be used more in standalone emergency departments. So with the resources, level 4 hospitals will be brand new to us in New York State. To give you an example, in Texas, to be a level trauma center, or to be an emergency department, you must be a verified trauma center. So this is a big change for us in New York. Level 4 hospital has 24/7 emergency department with trauma-trained ER nurses and their physicians, the lab available all the time. Really, the focus for the level 4 hospitals will be to initial resuscitation, stabilization, to move them to the next step in their trauma care. If we look at a level 3 facility, so Canton-Potsdam has a provisional status as a level 3. That's a trauma center that provides a surgeon and surgical coverage, including the OR promptly, which is defined at 30 minutes. Each of those 2 includes injury prevention activities, includes outreach, and a pretty significant process improvement committee and team. Level 2s and level 1s have pretty similar requirements in the new system. In the state system, there was a pretty significant difference between the requirements for a level 1 and level 2. They're much closer in the national verification system. Some of the biggest differences is that in the level 1, we're required to do research. So really, we're all familiar, I think, with the concept of best practices. And we're really charged with identifying what some of those best practices are, education about that. And also we have some other specialty service requirements, such as having cardiovascular surgery available 24/7. One of our challenges, or what's going to be new to us in the system, is that we're going to have the education of EMS and other hospitals about, now that we're moving to the 4 different levels. And really, New York State has adopted the CDC guidelines for field triage for the trauma patients in New York State. The first box is looking at vital signs and level of consciousness, so looking at shock-like vital signs or altered level of consciousness. The second box is really looking at findings such as physiological findings, penetrating trauma to the head, neck, groin, abdomen, upper extremities, our pelvic fractures, open and depressed skull fractures. So those first 2 boxes are our sickest trauma patients. And in the trauma system, they need to go to the highest level of trauma center in the system. If neither of those requirements are met as far as those sickest patients, we begin looking at the mechanism of injury. And that's box 3. And in box 3, it's our falls of greater than 20 feet for adults, or 2.5 times the height of child. The high impact motor vehicle crashes, rollovers, ejections, death of occupant in the same vehicle type of thing. And they should go to a trauma center, which, depending on the system, may not be the highest level of trauma center. And when we get to the 4th box, that is our high-risk patients. So that is older patients, unfortunately defined as 55 or it's children, it's patients on the new oral anticoagulants, burns, pregnancy greater than 20 weeks. So these should go to a hospital that's capable of caring for a trauma patient, which I really think in our trauma region, in our 14 counties, we've got a total of 28 hospitals. I think each one of the hospitals is capable of the rapid assessment and management of that trauma patient. The real question becomes, do they need a specialty resource? Is this a patient that needs a NICU? Is this a patient that needs a burn center? So I think a really good case for involvement of medical control for destination of those patients. So we have the State Trauma Advisory Committee, which is very similar in structure and format to the CMAC. And there were some recommendations that were made by the staff, which went to the CMAC. My understanding was they were discussed on the floor of the CMAC, and general approval was found for these subjects. I'm not sure how far it has made it down to the provider level. So I haven't seen the CMAC advisory or any protocol changes. So I'm not sure exactly what the format is to get that dispersed out to everyone. On the field level, it's saying that any pediatric trauma patient from the field who meets that CDC criteria needs to go to a pediatric trauma center, level 1 or level 2, if it's within 60 minutes of the injury. There was some interesting data that was presented about this topic, and this was New York State data from 2010 to 2014. And it looked at 3 categories of trauma centers: adult-only trauma center, peds-only trauma center, and kind of a hybrid in between what they termed a dual certified trauma center. So the peds exclusive one has dedicated peds surgeons, peds EM, peds trained emergency nurses. The dual one, depending on day of week, time of day, the child might be seen by a pediatric specialist or may be seen by the adult physicians. And then the last category was the adult-only ones. So for those sickest trauma patients of kids, boxes 1 and 2, their risk of mortality is 6 times greater at the adult-only trauma center than the peds-specific trauma center. For that dual certified one, or that dual one where it's part-time peds, part-time adult, that was 2 to 3 times higher for the mortality. For patients, the trauma patients who meet that CDC criteria that arrive at a non-pediatric trauma center, so that could be an adult center or a community hospital, the recommendation from the staff moving across, and I believe the letter has gone from the Commissioner of Health to the CEOs of hospitals on this one, saying that they must be secondarily transferred to pediatric trauma center. So one of the reasons I'm including some of this information is that depending on which hospital or which EMS agency responds, that may make some difference in destination for that PEDS patient. One of the things that we look to do also on our end at Upstate and Galasanos Children's Hospital was we wanted to maximize our trauma team activation response. And we put together, we had a lean management group that met for a week period of time, 2 hours per day. And we went through and made some process changes, which have some implications for both pre-hospital providers and the hospitals that are sending trauma patients to us. So on the EMS end, we're seeking earlier notifications. So, and as you might imagine, surrounding the city of Syracuse, it seems to be probably our greatest source of penetrating trauma. So we have relatively quick ETAs for those folks and short notification periods. So one of the things we're asking that transporting ambulances to us go and use Onondaga County Fire Control as a point of contact. Med-10, or we have a phone number there, but they're also capable of 155-340. So for example, folks in the Binghamton region are still using statewide VHF as their primary communications. That can go through the county fire control, can match up the frequencies, patch it into us on a recorded line. The other thing we're asking EMS, whether it is a field transfer or transport, so a 911 call to us, or an interfacility transfer, to give us 15 minutes notification when they're outside of our doors, so 15-minute ETA. And what that really helps us to do is not only have the trauma team assembled and waiting for them when they come through the door, but also there's a lot of behind-the-scenes movement, making sure the operating room's clear, the anesthesiologist has been identified, CT table is cleared and ready to go. Something really new for us is that we're looking for, especially for field activations, especially if the ETA to us is less than 15 minutes. And you can see that previous slide, we have quite a bit of territory that's within that 15 minutes. And we chose the mnemonic of ASAP, so that's our version of FAST in the non-stroke world. But what we're giving for a simple tool for our field providers to use, ASAP, airways unstable, shock psychic symptoms, altered mental status, or penetrating trauma, so basically above the elbows or above the knees. So field providers will be able to request activation at our highest level. And what we're saying is we recognize in those really short ETAs that they may not have time to give us a full report. As much report as they can give us en route while caring for the patient, we appreciate. And we're going to give them the acronym of MIST to go through, so mechanism of injury, signs and symptoms, and treatments en route for the reporting format. What's new for us also is a trauma timeout. One of the things that we recognized that was flawed in our system was the patient would come in and be ready to be transferred. So patient comes in, we're transferring them over to our stretcher, we're beginning our primary and secondary assessment at the same time that we're wanting EMS to go through and give us their report. And the reality is the whole team couldn't hear the EMS report, conflicting information, hard to pick up everything. So in the new process with the trauma timeout, patient comes in, they'll stay on EMS's stretcher. Report will be given by EMS. Typically it takes only 30 to 60 seconds to get that missed report. Once report's given, they'll be transferred over to our stretcher and we'll begin our primary and secondary assessments. And kind of the notable exception was if there was any immediate life threats that were being treated, like CPR in progress, we modify the timeout at that point. We move them over immediately. And there was just the format. And some changes we're requesting from the outside hospitals. And actually, this kind of our thoughts on this kind of came from a quality improvement case that we were talking with Canton Hospital, and where they were used to giving the report for another facility was different in the sequence. I had always grown up as an ER nurse that we put the doc on for doc to doc, and then we would try to do the nurse to nurse immediately. And the reality is that sometimes it may take a while for that transfer to occur. And if it takes a while, the problem is that the information for the nurse-to-nurse report is not going to contain all the most current information with it. And sometimes we'd also ask, say, when, please give us a call back when the ambulance is leaving, so we have a rough idea when they're going to hit. So this also prevents, if we go through and what we're going to do is ask that you move the nurse-to-nurse report to right immediately before the patient's transferred. So that way, single report would be the most current information that you folks have, plus we'll know that it's time that the patient's departing, so we're not going to ask for that second update. And we've also changed our process. Not only are we going to have field activations, but also our nursing staff for the first time is able to activate the trauma codes. So during the nurse-to-nurse report, our nurse from upstate is going to go through and activate the trauma code. We have a new status which we're terming standby, so that we know that they're en route from whichever hospital, approximate ETA, so people can start planning and freeing up whatever they need to do for when the patient arrives. Then we're also asking that the outside hospitals, if they would please remind EMS when they're 15 minutes out to give us that call. Then we'll stat page it so we can have the team ready when they come through the door. Same missed report we're looking for in our nurse-to-nurse report. And some of the things that we've identified too is that one of the challenges for those sickest trauma patients is really following the American College of Surgeons guidelines and the ATLS program, is that if you can't really treat, if you don't do any tests that you don't have the means to treat. So for example, altered mental status coming in, head injury, what we're asking is don't take the time to get the CT scan at that point. Unless you've got neurosurgical capabilities, we're looking for the transfer to start at that point. Same thing with most CT exams. So unless you have the intention of or the ability to take them to surgery at your facility, we'd rather go through and eliminate potential delays to get them headed towards the trauma center in that golden hour. And just in case anybody has never seen it, this is our trauma transfer process. So if you're a physician calling to transfer a patient to upstate, the first question they should be asking is this a trauma patient? If the answer is no, the second question now will be, is this a stroke patient? But really what we're looking for is the immediate acceptance of that trauma patient. Pediatric patients are 0 through age 14, 15 and above are adults, and we have a slightly different process. If it's a pediatric patient, the call is routed to our pediatric trauma surgeon, who accepts the patient and then notifies the emergency department that the trauma patient's en route. And just because our volume is about 10 times or greater on the adult side, the call goes to emergency medicine for the initial acceptance of the patient, and they contact the trauma surgeon who's on it. So I thank you for the opportunity. I really wanted to just talk to you about a couple of changes, both statewide, as far as the CDC guidelines, and some more local changes as far as that transfer of the trauma patient, some implications for the transferring hospitals and EMS. Any questions that we can answer for you? Thank you for the time and enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
You guys are going to let him off that easy? Really?
It's all that good clean living I'm doing.
Yes, so.
Has everybody signed in? Does anybody need the sign-in sheet? Has everybody had it?
Okay, we're going to move on to correspondence and DOH enforcement list. Jared Wells, violation 800.165. His New York State certification was revoked 3/14. 3/14/16.
That's why we
And
just
Rawlsky
made
Jr.
some comments.
Suspended 1 year effective 3/14/16. Suspension stayed. Civil penalty $2,000. 1750 suspended. Violations 800.16A7. I do believe we have some correspondence that Ann stepped out at it. The best.
You're up, Ann.
I'm up to correspondence and I'm looking for the papers, but I'm not finding them.
Good seeing you.
Thank you. I would like to keep that for you to follow if there's any questions or concerns that come up.
Lewis County, so we have Lewis County Search and Rescue, Krogan Fire Department, and then the request for membership.
So we received correspondence, and I'm not going to read the whole letter, but basically effective yesterday, Lewis County Search and Rescue began EMS coverage for portions of the towns of Krogan and New Bremen. And I believe that Krogan may be surrendering their CON, so it was...
That is a fact.
That is a fact that they are going to be, but coverage is in place, and I believe that they were able to make all the notifications appropriately according to the policy statement on surrendering the CON. I had worked through with both agencies, trying to ensure that all the proper notifications were made. So this is kind of the notification for this body. And the second one, which I've lost, oh, here it might be hiding, there it is an email from Jay Gwinnett, who was submitting a letter of interest in becoming a member of the North Country Remac. At this time, we would like to kind of table this. As you can see, we're becoming quite a large group, almost too large, as a committee of the REMSCO. So I think that we need to be, looking at that and at our membership, or the REMSCO needs to.
And the original intent was a limit of so many EMS providers from each county, like 3, and then so many physicians from each county, plus the college education representative and the chair. It wasn't to be an unlimited number of people.
So those intentions were never put in writing, and previously we had, we were beating down the doors to find interest, and it's good that we have this interest. That's a good thing, but the larger your committees, I don't think anybody will argue with me, the larger your committees become, the less work that gets done. So we're going to be, the REMSCO, the REMSCO is going to be looking at that, I believe. So that was our second correspondence, so.
I think you need to.
Okay, moving on to old business. Air medical?
I don't know if there's any reports or questions from Air Medical from the last meeting, but I do have numbers for this past month. Completed in Jefferson County, 16 flights, Lewis County 4, St. Lawrence 27. These are completed flights for the last month.
How many from St. Lawrence?
27.
Gee.
Do you have how many you weren't able to fly? How many requests that you weren't able to fly?
I can provide that. I don't have it.
I just didn't know if you knew what you were looking at.
Do you want that for weather? And I can do it for weather maintenance.
I was just curious, out of, the ones for Jefferson County, how many of them did you turn away because of?
Of weather? Okay, I can get that.
Or whatever.
Hold on now.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you. State EMS meetings?
The state meeting, I did not attend because I was on in the Caribbean for 10 days. And got a report.
Have these already been passed around, Kurt?
They were in minutes.
No, this is the new one. the minutes for the last one. All right, so while those are being passed around, I'm going to hit some of the high points on this. I am certainly not going through all of it. I think it's important to understand the Part 800 changes regarding controlled substances, where it'll require all ALS ambulances to have controlled substances continuing to move forward. The state last year came out with a process for agencies to become blood transfusion services. They've only received 2 applications for such, one approved, one in process. As far as I know, we only have one agency that I'm aware of that's actively pursuing this. I've heard rumor of 2 or 3 others. But this is all stuff that goes to the state with a notification to us when they meet the regulation. It requires a lot of work with the blood banks and the sending facilities. If you have any questions in regards to that, please ask Mark Beavers. I'm sure he would be happy to fill you in on the process.
Don't do it.
It's very lengthy.
Moving forward, the BLS protocols on the state website have been updated, kind of. As you notice, if you look through, they're all in one document now instead of a multitude of documents. But they made a couple changes, so the absolute most up-to-date ones are not quite there. And you'll notice that a lot of them have notes on them because they don't have all the AHA changes in there as well. The second issue we ran into that was brought to my attention is they don't have stop lines in there for certified first responders. So they state at the top that it's a unified protocol, which means it's for all levels of care, but they don't have stop lines in there for a CFR. Remember, and please pass on to your agencies, that your certified first responders can only act up to their scope of practice. And in order to identify that, we need to utilize the curriculum. So the state advised that they were working on getting stop lines in there. EMS Memorial will be May 17th. Providers to be added to that. The next meetings are May 24th and 25th. One of the protocol changes is the hemorrhage control. So the last protocol that came out will change from the tourniquet being placed high and tight to back to the original intent, which was at least 3 inches above the wound, not on a joint. There's some more wording in there for transport to trauma centers. And if it's an unstable scene, then high and tight is fine. You need to, place it and get it. So the protocol that's currently online, unless they changed it in the last couple of days when I had not looked, I didn't look at it today, is the old one. But the actual education they did last year reflects their change now. So with placing it at least 3 inches above the wound, not over the joint. Old advisories regarding the treatment of patients with hemophilia and biphasic defibrillation are gone. They are now part of the current curriculum, so they're cleaning up there. They approved BLS acquisition of 12 lead as a regional adjunct. As discussed at the December meeting, this must be regionally approved. They're supposed to get more information, so my thought to this group is let's wait till we get more information. My past experience has taught me that things change. So until they come out with some guidance on that, I'd almost hold on that. And we currently don't even have ALS able to transmit fully throughout the region. I think that needs to be our continued focus before we look at BLS. Ann's thoughts only. As of the meeting, there was no update or no uses on the check and eject, but I'll update that in my program agency report. CIC, CLI exams will be changing in May. I'm not going to get into all the particulars unless somebody wants me to. Cards are supposed to be done in-house now, so hopefully you'll be getting, the providers will be getting those quickly. A lot of discussion on the TransCare ambulance bankruptcy with an emphasis on agencies, even if they're strong now, should have good continuity of operation plans in place. And as a region, we should be looking, at continuity of operation plans as well. So, and just kind of, we always struggle with volunteers. We don't have enough volunteers. Well, an interesting little note that was brought out was New York State ranks 50th in volunteerism. Anyhow, there was some motions and some legal actions in there that you can look at. If I don't have a number there, it means I apparently wrote it down wrong and couldn't find it. So those are the big things. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me on the rest of the report.
Does anyone have any questions for Ann? Okay.
I'll do that in the program agency report. So with the hospital destination, one of the things we had to wait in here was the folks coming out of the RTAC had to say we haven't had another meeting on it, so we've had no movement on that.
EKG transmission?
We're told that we're 96.6% there at getting Upstate and St. Joe's on board. I follow up with them weekly, and it's just a matter of getting their internal policies together to get that email address. Joe and Kurt have been, and the IT folks at Portland Regional Planning Organization are getting on board with how to set up. Tom Zecker came over so we could get additional ambulances on board in Jefferson County and get this moving. And I'm going to turn it over to Joe from here.
On Tuesday, Tom came and instructed Kurt and two of our IT folks on how we set up the service pros. We did 5 more that afternoon. They are finishing up with the other 5 here in the next couple of days. Elliot Reckland from our office is doing it. We're ready to deploy them, but we really want to do it the one time when Upstate and St. Joe's are on board, so that we're not directing people to do one thing and then very shortly directing them to do a second. Last fall, there were tests done by South Jeff, Tiers, Town Watertown, Black River, and they were successful in moving the strip, the photo of the strip, to Tom and SNC, who was carrying him and set there. But Dr. Delaney and I believe another doctor Dr. Roby.
I think it's Jake.
Okay. But at this point, it's Upstate and St. Joe's regular secure email and agreeing to let us send to it. We're very close. Ann has been doing a great job. Getting through that bureaucracy is difficult.
Any questions regarding EKG transmission? Dave, do we have any update on the infectious disease tag?
Well, just the fact that by now everybody's aware that the commissioner's order has been rescinded. So all the panic that everybody went through is ready to be done. Other than that, just going to put out a directive that anything that is any type of a heavy concern on infectious disease tags supposed to go through public health. And then at that point, they'll make their interview, make the determination. And as of this point, the quote-unquote regional ambulance is Rural Metro out of Syracuse, and that patient would be most likely transported to SUNY Upstate. So it goes through public health. The call would be transported. Even the 911 call-in, the 911 center would be making that transfer over to public health under a designated phone number. So the panic for us is released, but we do want to remind everybody that you still have infectious diseases out there, and you should at least annually practice donning and doffing your protective equipment. The equipment will only work if you use it properly. And we need to remember that the only people who got ill from the Ebola scare were the people who had possibly had an issue with donning or doffing their equipment through the study that they made after the fact. So that's where we're at. I think this tag can come off the agenda.
Medical control manual update.
Okay, we continue to work on this, keeping in mind that as these new protocols move forward, that's going to change everything in the medical, a lot, not everything, but a lot of the stuff in the med control manual. And the last protocol update that I did, it also requires me going out and educating each of the hospital emergency departments and redoing all the tests with the physicians and all of that. So, quite frankly, there's no sense in rolling out a new med control manual until we're doing all this at once. Or there's going to be, unless the group disagrees with that, and if they do, then they can join a committee and come on down to the office and help me with this.
Okay. Jim, do you have any update on our?
We're going to be meeting the 14th at Governor Rescue Squad, and all the committee members are going to be there.
Okay, thank you. Dave, protocol review committee?
At this point, there is some significant move towards the collaborative protocols, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard that bannered about, hopefully seen the emails, especially those that are on the protocol committee. What we'd like to do, and Ann had put out a request, we want to put out the collaborative protocols for review, the 30-day review, for all providers to be able to look at them and see what's going on with the changes. Currently, we've been operating under a 3-region collaborative. The other 2 regions that we were working with have already signed on to move to the larger collaborative. I believe the larger collaborative is 11 regions, Ann, do you remember?
It'll be 11 and 14 with the 3 of us coming on
Yeah,
board.
so it'll be 14 when we come on board. We're really moving towards, if you will, a statewide ALS protocol, which in the mid-90s, we were trying to do that, and everybody said, no, we can't do that. Well, here we are in 2016, it looks like we're going to get there. So what we're looking forward for is to get those out to everybody for a review. We kind of need to get that approval here, and then I believe it needs to go to the REMSCO for a formal approval to send those out. Yeah, Charlie. There we go.
Okay. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Physical restraint protocol.
I'll get that emergency report.
Albuterol policy statements updates.
So at the last meeting, everybody approved my little wording change to clarify the albuterol policy statement, and as I dove into it a little bit deeper, I decided it needed more than a little wording change. So I didn't do anything with it. It really, for some reason, and I'm not sure why, other than maybe the state didn't have an albuterol program when the Remac, which was even well before my time here, when albuterol was introduced for BLS, and there was a protocol. Dave might have history on this. So the region had a separate protocol, which differs just slightly, like in the number of albuterol treatments a BLS can give. So it's different from the state. So what I'd like to see is us get rid of the all regional policy and have them follow the state policy.
Make that a form of
Yes.
motion.
Simplify it.
Can you make a motion, Jim?
I make a motion that we go by the state.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So with that said, we need to just, I overhauled that program once, but I think that was like 2006, so I think it needs to be looked at. And the other one I believe that we need to look at is our BLS blood glucometry, because I do believe that the blood sugar levels at the state, remember they've been back and forth between 60 and 80.
It's back to 60.
I think they're back to 60. I think that they were at 80 when we did our BLS blood glucometry, so that needs to be updated as well. So those are a couple things we'll be working on.
So would you like a couple committees to work on that, Ian? Some volunteers?
I would say that probably one committee would suffice to do both of, or if they want to look at both of them, but I think we need to rewrite the albuterol test. That's.
Any volunteers?
I'll set on it.
I'll say on it.
Two.
Howard, Jim.
Debbie?
Howard, Jim, Deb.
Does anyone else have any interest? Okay, thank you. Do we have any other old business? Charlie?
You talked about having medical records involved with scratch rates, and I don't know whether that's advancing or not, but I did send a proposed letter to the
So I know that we had talked about that, and I'm trying to get out. I had met with one of the agencies already, and I've done an ALS inspection, and I'm currently waiting on follow-up with that. Again, I'm trying to meet with all those agencies and move forward on that way from the program agency side, to see if we can grab their attention at all, and then if not.
I think this has gone on a very long time. This past due to have our agency net directors take a stand and try to get these folks who are constantly put a burden on other agencies to step up or find a way to fix the problem. I can tell you who they are next month.
And I think, Charlie, we all agree with that, but I don't think Ian has taken this approach in the past to speak directly with them. And if we find in a very short period of time that that's not sufficient, then we will send those letters out.
Yeah, only one of them, right, is ALS. So other than taking away their regional adjuncts, which a couple of them don't even have any regional adjuncts.
They'll need a med director around.
Correct.
If the med director says, I'm not happy with your scratch rate being 25%, or one agency 50%, and one agency is taking 100%, don't make any of the calls, they'll have two for calling one. Then that needs to be addressed. There are agencies in this county that are doing a terrible disservice to their public. I call them smoke and mirrors agencies. They shine up that ambulance and get in the Memorial Day parade, but 2 hours later, if you choke at the picnic, you're probably going to die because they can't muster a crew. And I've been shining a light on this program for 6 or 7 years now. And I can tell you next month, through the same 4 or 5 agencies will have greater than 15 or 20% scratch rate. They aren't moving. At least 2 of those agencies I've sat down with extensively with not just the agency, but with the political leadership of their townships and villages. And as soon as I left town, the plan stopped. So I've done all that I can do with these agencies. There's nothing more for me to do. And I don't have the authority to do anything more, but the med directors do. So that's what I'm asking for is support. And getting these guys to first acknowledge that they have a problem, because some of them say, we don't have a problem. They're wrong. They can prove they've got a problem. But I also think that in the agencies that haven't allowed anyone to meet with their political leadership, some of those folks aren't aware that they've got a problem. I think there are towns and villages out there that think they've got a solid squad and they don't. So
Now, are you talking about first responder agencies or transporting agencies?
Transport.
Charlie, I do know at the state level, if an agency scratch rates for a certain period of time, the regional council, if they exceed that time, can notify the Department of Health, and then they would have to come up with, the agency would have to come up with a plan to rectify the problem. Or their territory can be reassigned to another agency. That is, I can call, if you want, Dana Jones and get some, the new current information, because it does
I'd love to
change.
see that, because I don't know where that's,
Yeah,
any part of Article 30, there's no accountability in Article 30.
Yeah.
It says you've got this chunk of turf, but it doesn't say you ever really have to answer a call, and the only remedy is if someone else applies for a CON. Well, most of these agencies are small enough and have few enough calls so that it's not lucrative for anybody else to apply for a CON.
That's an issue.
And that's part of the issue. But here's the problem. If you have an agency that says, hey, I got an ambulance, and then they can't answer calls, that's terrible.
So let me just add something before this conversation goes much farther. We have an agency in one of our counties that's had 100% scratch rate for 2 months. I put that information together. We, at the program agency, have not received any PCRs from this agency since I've been back in July, which is, they're on paper PCRs, so they should be doing that. I put that information together. We included our letters attempting to contact them. I've made phone calls to the agency and received no response. I've called the fire hall directly to be told nobody's home. The people I need to talk to are not available. Not once have I had a return phone call. And all of this, and I moved directly to the state with this, specifically because I think there is grounds when we're not getting the PCRs, because that changes the playing field a little bit. You know, that's part of their requirement to do. And the best that I got from that is we'll send them a letter.
Exactly. And here's the rub. That's another county, so those aren't my horses and that ain't my rodeo. But in this county, I can predict which 4 or 5 agencies will have a problem next month, because they're the same 4 or 5 agencies every month for the last 4 or 5 years. So I just feel it's reached the point where something else, some other pressure needs to be brought to bear.
Other comments?
And the other part of this, see, is, and Raleigh is one of our, Raleigh is surrounded by a couple of these agencies. So that puts an undue burden on that agency, which is answering all its calls. Now all of a sudden they're covering other areas. They get halfway there and they get scratched. So that costs them $100 to fire up the ambulance and run it at 100 miles an hour towards a call. And now he gets nothing out of that. So, you know, these scratch rates don't only affect the communities that they're in, they put a burden on the communities that surround them and that actually have solved their problem. Clayton had the same problem 10 years ago, doesn't have a problem anymore. They stepped up, they fixed it, but they're surrounded by agencies that are not.
So why don't we ask the providers that are here? Are you in support of sending a letter to the agencies that belong to you, if those are the offending agencies, essentially expressing your displeasure?
I'm from St. Lawrence County, and I think the scratch rate topic is, Ann's kind of try to shed some light on it at our local meetings, going back and looking at the data, but it seems to be the elephant in the room most of the time. Everybody knows it's a problem, but nobody's been willing to talk about it until recently. I think that the first step is Ann identifying it and reporting it to those agencies and trying to meet with them and figure out how they correct it. Perhaps this body needs to come up with some criteria that needs to be followed by Ann, so when we get to a certain point that the Department of Health is notified. Specific criteria outlined when it happens.
I think we should first send a letter to kind of response. We need to support Ann because she's taken the whole blunt, but I think some of us should go there. Maybe it would help to have people from other counties talk to these other agency and make them aware, because sometimes some of these agencies have conflicts that go back generations, and you can't solve it, those agencies, so someone outside can maybe help resolve some of the issues.
But if they won't talk to somebody within their own county that has the title where you can assist them, somebody calling from another county is not going to go anywhere.
No.
If they're not responding to Charlie, who's the county EMS director, then what good is somebody from another county calling? It's going to be useless. It's not going to go anywhere.
Maybe it's too rigid to say that if you have a scratch rate of XYZ for a certain period of time, we're going to send you a letter, and then after that, we're going to ask to meet with you, and then 30 days after that, we're going to notify the Department of Health. I think we have to have a criteria that we're going to grade all agencies against in the region if that's what we want to do.
Yeah, you have to be consistent. There's no doubt about
Right.
that.
I don't want to do something for one ambulance service and not do it for the other. We need to treat everybody the same way regardless of where they are. So I think some criteria needs to be established in order to move forward.
Craig?
This is definitely I'm with a small agency, and we have our problems. There's no doubt about it. But it's definitely something, you look in the newsprint and like that, and the TV ads, and there are a few departments that are actually standing up and saying, hey, we've got a problem out in the light of day, so that their constituents know about it, so that their municipal leaders know about it and like that, but there's many that don't. And it seems like in all the 3 counties, there are places that we do have this problem that needs to be brought out into the light of day. And I think that in reality, people that are having problems know they're having problems, but they don't want to admit it either to their leaders that they're trying to get their income from through contracts with municipalities or whatever. So I very much support the idea of working with Ann and getting this out there and setting up some sort of a criteria so everybody's dealt with similarly.
So that Ann doesn't have another thing on her plate, a committee? I'm sorry, I'm asking for another committee, but a committee to determine what the criteria and the action would be? Yes, no?
Looking, I don't know as if we need a committee in St. Lawrence County. We could use the EMS Advisory Board in our county, I think, to develop that type of criteria. I don't know if you guys could do a similar thing in Jefferson and Lewis County.
Well, it would be good within the region if it was similar.
Right, but to send the information here.
I think we should have a member from each county kind of work together with me to come up with a platform, and there should be representation from each county.
But Charlie's done something similar.
I would volunteer Bob and I to be on that committee. Bob would probably hit me, but...
I'd go along with that, and I would enjoy being on that committee because I've faced the same challenges in Lewis County as well. I've actually gone as far as sitting down with various agencies and pointing out to them that you've taken municipal money stating that you can perform a service. If you can't perform that service, then you are in fact in breach of contract, regardless of whether you're a volunteer agency or a paid agency. And after I pointed that out to them is when I started to get a little action. We've just put into Lewis County, which I was going to bring up at the next meeting, a policy for known service. It's going to list it as a known service and an unknown service. If you're unknown, in other words, unknown being not having an EMT and a driver readily available to take the call, you're listed as an unknown service. So if you're unknown, then simultaneously a known service will be dispatched with you. So if the next village over has a EMT and a driver that's confirmed, they're a known service, so they'll simultaneously be dispatched. Yep, there's going to be a lot of people getting canceled. Yes, it's going to cause some heartaches in the beginning. But what it is it's a motivator to get them to actually be accountable for themselves. If they know that they can't put an EMT in the back of an ambulance, it's no different than if it's got a flat tire. You can't move it. So holding them accountable for their actions and having them take their ambulance out of service when they know that they can't perform the service is what we're trying to do.
Okay, so Bob and Charlie, you'll work with Ann, and so we need someone from St. Lawrence.
Doc, I'd like to tell one more short story, just so you understand.
Okay, we just have to keep moving, but go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, well, one of these agencies that has a perennially high scratch rate Rather than address that problem, they decided they'd buy a $650,000 ladder truck for the fire department because they have one building that's tall enough so they can't access the top floor with ground ladders.
Okay.
So this is some of the mentality we're up against.
Okay. But I think we have a plan moving forward here, but we do need someone from, did I speak correctly and say St. Lawrence? St. Lawrence County.
If you need somebody,
Okay.
I'll do that.
Okay. So the three of you work with Ann, and we'll come up with some criteria and a process to follow from there.
And Dr. Delaney, back to your original question about the letter from Remac. That's
I forgot about that original question, yes.
So this is a letter, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, that we were going to have Remac send to the medical directors requesting action, correct?
And then the medical directors would send it.
I don't,
Well, it's
I think the med directors of these agencies need to be aware.
Yes.
Well, and I agree, and I think part of the problem is that I don't know who some of the med directors of these, I mean, you've told us who the agencies were in the past, but no one's been definitively able to say who the medical directors are.
They would be on par with the Department of Health in the central office. And
So
all.
Ann will supply, Ann's going to supply that information to the medical directors so they can be aware.
This is probably a very small subset of docs that need to be involved.
Probably.
Personally, my agencies are sitting at the table and I can swat them upside the head if they are violating, so.
Off camera.
Yes.
Okay,
So I would be
in support of
in
that.
support of a letter to the providers in
Okay.
question. And if
Craig.
they have questions, we can direct
Sorry.
them back to us for
Not to
further
beat this
guidance.
thing up too much, but I just think that
Yes.
we're looking at this and having people that are not willing to admit a problem they have within their agencies. But this comes down to the basics of what we're doing here, and that's taking care of people. It's kind of, I don't think it's a good idea to be worrying about feelings and egos and like that when we've got people here that we're trying to take care of.
Okay. Ann is going to get the information out to the medical directors regarding the agencies that are an issue, and Bob, Charlie, and Ken are going to work with Ann to set up some criteria to address this. Okay. Let's move on to program agency report. I don't want to ask.
Okay. All right, so I'll just kind of quick run through this, hopefully. So just some general stuff, business stuff. We did finally get payments. I had reported the last meeting that we hadn't.
I called that next day, and then that afternoon they called her, so. Worked.
So we finally got our signed contract today. We're 9 months in with this. Our memorandum of understanding with the REMSCO, which also covers the duties that we do here for the Remac, was approved by the state. The Narcan, the opioid overdose program, we've supplied since the last meeting where we had done City of Watertown Police Department. And we now have Narcan and all the Watertown Sheriff Department folks. And we did some Narcan trainings at Ogdensburg Fire Department. I did 4 of them, and they were opened up to all of St. Lawrence County. I did an ALS inspection at Cape Vincent, who is one of the agencies from the previous discussion, and I'm awaiting response back from them. They do understand that they have a problem, and I am hoping to meet with their town folks as well, or village, town, whichever they are. This was an update they sent me for the check and inject program. And you really can't see it there, but neither can I. It's 283 participating agencies, 17 Remacs endorsed the program. And as of state meetings, there wasn't a use, and that says first use with an exclamation point, but I'm not sure if that means they had a use or not. They are missing some paperwork, so if your agency's a QA or a coordinator of that, make sure that you're sending in the paperwork that they need. Anytime that it's used, they need to make that phone call and do the quality improvement survey on the website. So Again, that was just kind of a first quarter report that came from the check and inject demo project. There was a discussion at the state level on whether ambulances needed to have the epi auto injectors on board as well as this. There was controversy back and forth with, quite frankly, it's not really in Part 800 requirements, but they have signed epinephrine auto injector notice of intents, and it was just kind of left at whatever towards the end because there's really no bite behind. They have to keep the auto injectors on. But they should have, if they're signed up as an epinephrine agency, they should have some way, whether it's participation in this demo project or an auto injector on board to be able to deliver that. Again, this is a demo project, which means in 18 months from the time this started, you may be putting those auto injectors back on the ambulance, or you may be able to move forward with making your own kit. There will probably be somewhat of a time lapse in there before the Commissioner of Health makes that decision, and it'll be based on the information. So a lot of folks don't understand what the program is, but that's what it is. It's just a demo project. Any questions on that? This is just kind of the same as the last time I reported. There's been nobody that I'm aware of that's got put narcotics on board that didn't have them. Again, Jefferson County is all set. Those are the agencies in Lewis and St. Lawrence. I think last time I had Harrisville on there, but I was told that they did have them. So I removed them from the list. That's the only change to that list. These are EPCR agencies, with Norfolk Rescue being our newest addition. That's why they're in red up there. They began April 1st. So that gives us about, I think it's about 45% of our transport agencies up there with EPCRs. So I thought it was, I figured at each meeting I'd start throwing some information out there. So this is what we have in our database right now that I'm providing you. The first response agencies do not all have agency codes, right? A lot of them are agencies that are providing first response, but they've never gone through or they've never completed getting that agency code, and we're in the database. I haven't yet identified whether 100% of them are all responding or not, but again, for a BLSFR, they can operate without it. But that's where we are with Jefferson County, and their levels of care I kind of put under there. So if anybody has any questions or think that's wrong, please get with me so we can make sure things are up to date. Lewis, we still have one BLSFR listed. I don't know if they're responding or not, and we can remove them. Okay. That's why I brought it up.
That was Castellan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Does that look about right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. They were back and forth in 2012 when I left. I wasn't sure where they ended up. And there's St. Lawrence, so. Anyhow, Spring Fling, as of Friday, those were the numbers. We had 196 registrations. We got 11 doing the American Heart Association instructor course, which tomorrow the pre-course letters will go out for those 11 folks. They have an online thing that they have to do first, which there is a charge of $30 for. And all the information will be in this letter, which we'll send them via email. So if you have anybody going to that, make sure they get that done ahead of time. And there's we're doing the new breakfast session. We already have 43 signed up, so that was quite impressive for a first time session. Questions on Spring Fling numbers? And that's what's kept me busy this last quarter. We did receive an excellence in EMS. It was actually a multidisciplinary call in Lewis County. All of these agencies were involved in it. We do not know all the providers. I'm actually going to throw Bob McKenzie under the bus and let him talk a little bit about it. But what I would do is entertain a motion to approve. I don't have like one specific PCR for this. The thought process was maybe if the folks here approved this, that we could potentially just give out an award to the agencies in general at their banquet if their folks would allow that. And I'm going to throw Bob to talk a little bit about it.
That'd probably be about the best way to handle it. What it was is it's because of the rural nature and the type of accident that it was a tractor-trailer manure truck rollover. There was a lot of agencies involved because it was Glenfield's fire district who doesn't have extraction capabilities. Lowville Fire who got called for JAWS. Lions Falls Fire got called for a second set of JAWS with additional equipment. LSR was the ambulance agency. Lewis County 911 of course orchestrated the whole thing. Lifenet of New York flew the gentleman out, and New York State Police secured the scene. It was a group of individuals working exceptionally well together. It was very fluid. Everybody did exactly as they were supposed to do, and ultimately the patient had a very good outcome. And I guess the environmental police were pretty pleased with the way the whole thing went down as well, because it was a manure spill, and believe it or not, that is a hazardous material.
And I think part of that, I mean, from what I read is, the manure was leaking into the cab.
Yep.
With the trapped occupant.
The cab of the truck was upside down in a ditched area, and the manure tank was full, and it was continuously leaking during this whole rescue process. So it was a group of people working together very well to, one, mitigate or to change the flow of the manure, and then two, to do the actual rescue. It was incredible to watch everybody work together and work very, very hard to have an excellent outcome.
For a crappy call, no pun intended. Sorry, I had to do that.
Oh, I gotta say, it was good that it happened in Lewis County. We know how to handle it.
That's what I was gonna say.
So I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Howard.
So, before that we go forward, I just want, so we're making a motion that we're not going to recognize these people at Spring Fling, but we're going to recognize them individually at their banquets?
We're going to recognize the departments at the county banquet.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. That's definitely suitable. It's not like we need a letter for each individual person that was there, or a certificate for each individual person there. Rather an agency as a whole.
Because like you said, it sounds like this was a crappy call, and you guys handled yourselves very well, and it deserves public recognition. I thought it was individual department banquets. They all know they did a good job. I'm saying everybody else should.
They do, and it was all Lewis County agencies. If you so choose to bring it up at the
well, wherever
the regional
as long as it's
that's at your
forum,
discretion. We can discuss it up there at least, or we can discuss that later. Because at least 2 agencies will be there.
Would anyone like to second the motion?
I'll second
Any further? Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, and then so we have a medical director change for Carthage. Dr. Brown, I forgot the initials again, is getting?
Yes.
PCS, thank you. Military, which, do you want to explain that for the folks that may not understand?
I'm going to be leaving Fort Drum, moving on, so the Army will be moving me out of the area, so I will not be able to continue on as the medical director for the agency squads.
So Dr. Parshall, who is currently the ED director at Carthage, is going to become the medical director for Carthage Rescue. And I'm currently working with the rescue to make sure that all the paperwork is redone for all their adjuncts, their narcotics, their CME program, the whole kit and caboodle that you have to change. So I'm not 100. Do you have an idea when the changes, is there going to be a date on?
Yeah, we're aiming for like July 1st, because that's when I'm going to be leaving the area.
Okay. So the change to happen on July 1st. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the medical director switch as of July 1st.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Also would like to personally
No,
thank
you gotta stay.
Dr. for your service. Good luck to you.
Yes, I agree with that because we don't have another meeting. Oh, yes, we do. We have June's meeting. Sorry. All right, so just as on the report, public access defibrillation, new locations, Kraft Foods in Loudville, Clarkson University in Potsdam, Morgan Stanley offices in Potsdam and Watertown, public access defibrillation sites. BLS CPAP, Alexandria Bay, Tri-Town, Parrishville, Town of Watertown. At the last meeting, we decided I could move forward with those, so I will send them approval letters unless somebody disagrees with that. Epinephrine auto-injector, Clarkson University, Narcan, this is BLS Narcan. Oh, I put BLS approvals up there. Clarkson University, St. Lawrence University, Morristown Fire Department, and Albuterol Clarkson University. And just so you're aware, Clarkson University just received an agency code as a BLSFR. That was one of the approvals we did at the last meeting. And that's why they're shown under each one of them. So the patient restraint update at the last meeting, we moved forward with doing suspensions in February. We actually had 3 suspensions, 2 of which went in and completed it, and we still have 1 that's outlying. They are suspended from the region, and the agency is aware of that, and they have not come back to the agency or, made any arrangements to have that suspension removed. So that's where we are with that. And that's the end of my report, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Do we have anything?
Dr. Delaney,
Oh, sorry, Jim.
for those of us that were around back in the early 80s, where I was come back from a vacation, I noticed our first regional medical director passed away was Tony Mattis. He died of cancer. I used to be the ER doctor at Carthage Area Hospital, at the Old Mercy, and some at Samaritan Medical Center. And I just think those of us that were around in the early years in 1984, and he took on the responsibility of being medical director, that was a big step forward back then. And I just think we should be aware that one of our original ALS physicians passed away.
Okay.
Tying in with the suspensions, I would like to talk about charging a fee for people to come back online after they've been suspended. The first time that they get suspended, it's a grace one, but if they get a second suspension within 3 years, we charge them $25. The same people, since I was doing it when Ann left and everybody left up there, and Debbie and I were doing it, and it's the same people every 6 months.
Yeah.
So maybe if we hit them in their pocket, maybe they will get them in on time. So the first time, it's a grace, we give you 1 grace, and if you have a second suspension within 3 years, it's going to cost you $25 to come back online. There's a lot of work, and there's a lot of money that's expended by the program agency when we suspend somebody. You check it, you get a hold of them, and then we're sending them certified letters, and we're doing all this stuff, and it's just, again, if it was different people, but it's the same people every time.
Is it legal for us to do that?
Yes.
New York City does it.
New York City also charges to take their regional exam. We could do that too, but
Yes, we
it
could.
would be pretty unpopular.
Another thing I'd like to add to that, to have a little more bite, since it's a second time, is not only the fee, but maybe a mandatory 90-day suspension. If they're a paid individual, they'll think about it again, or volunteer. In a lot of systems, if they do it the second time, they get 90 days before they can come back online.
So should we have a regional policy developed so everybody's treated the
Well,
same
yeah,
way?
it's got to be communicated, obviously.
I just think, again, it's the same people
Yeah.
every 6 months. It's just, so we're,
Sure.
we're expending the time and the money to send them certified letters, and
I'm in favor.
They go the very last day, every time.
So let's have a motion.
So I make a motion that a fee of $25 be charged to somebody that has a suspension for CME, not having their CMEs completed. After the first, one time it doesn't cost you. The second time, in 3 years, it costs you $25. Come back online.
How about a third time?
Second time and every time thereafter.
Yeah.
25 isn't enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
25 bucks isn't much.
25, it goes up 25 each time. That would be good.
I like the 90-day suspension.
Problem with that is we don't have enough people anyway, but the dollars generally hit home a little bit more than the suspension, I think, personally.
But if they're a paid provider, and some of them are paid providers, if they had to be suspended for 90 days with no income, they'd think about it.
So we have a motion on the table here, guys. So what do you want to do with this? Does somebody want to amend it, or are we going to go with it?
Start with the fee and
Just the fee.
I move we do it now and review it later to see if it needs more teeth.
see if it corrects the problem.
So I need a second for that motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, other new business. Does anyone have anything they'd like to bring forward? If not, do you have anything else, Ian? Okay, a motion please to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Make motion.
Thank you. We do have CQI.
A real quick CQI update.